Welcome to the Speak with People podcast. My name is Jason Raitz. I'll be your host, and this podcast exists to help you improve your communication skills. Whether you communicate one-on-one, to a team, from a stage, or from behind a screen, we know that when we improve our communication skills as leaders, it exponentially changes everything. It improves our relationships, it improves our leadership skills, and it improves our business skills. So let's get ready to dive into this next episode. Well, how can you transform your workplace environment, especially when you're not in charge? Are there any communication skills, any leadership skills that you need that maybe could quite possibly elevate your stock with your company or your leadership team or your executive? Are you the type of leader who avoids the he said, she said gossip? Do you typically get in the middle of it? Do you stay out of it? And then lastly, we're going to talk about some communication tips and ideas of how you can win with your coworkers, you can win with your boss and the people around you. Today, I just can't wait because we're going to give you some tangible tips to help you win in your workplace. And I'm beyond excited to interview a leader. I've been reading the materials and the books that she's written. I love what she offers in her company, and she's the CEO of Creative Energy Options. She's a Ph.D. She's an author of many books, including bestsellers. She's worked with so many companies to transform their workplace cultures. Before I tell you everything about her, I'll leave some for her. Sylvia, thank you so much for being on the Speak with People podcast.
Oh, I'm delighted. And I love the direction you're going with this because we're all leaders on some level. And to grow as a leader is very powerful. So we're on the right path together.
I love that. Well, hey, before I hop in and ask you a little bit more about your story, just because you kind of set me up, and I love this, I get so much pushback sometimes from some of our listeners, and they say, Jason, you don't understand. I'm just not a leader. And I'd love for you to just kind of speak to that, because I think you just sort of did expound on it, because you know everyone inside of them has some leadership. So I'd love to know your thoughts on that.
Well, for me, the most interesting thing is if we think we're not a leader, we tend to hold back.
Yep.
If I had a nickel for everybody I've ever talked with or worked with, when I said, well, go tell your direct report, go tell your colleague, and they say, no, I'll end up in HR, to which I say, well, okay, then go tell HR.
Yep.
It's all there. And we do need to learn how to speak out. So I'm going to ask you a question, okay?
Yes.
Kind of think I have the answer, but if you're on a fence and you start having all these upsets coming at you through the day or through the week, which side would you fall on? Would you shout it out or would you stuff it down?
Well, I guess, boy, that's good. I've probably done both over the years.
But one, you have a tendency toward one or the other.
Yeah, I definitely have learned over the years, the more that I, shove it down, the bigger of a deal it's going to be later. So try to deal with it as soon as possible.
Well, I think we all have to look at that. Why is it that some of us, drama queen over here, who would shout it out, and it has benefits and negatives to it, and other people just stuff it down? And you know what you just said is really critically important. You pay for it later. But the thing is, if you shout it out, you pay for it later too. So the latest book, I'm just going to show you the title of it. It's let me see. Can you let me get this up perfectly? Yeah. Can you see it?
Yep.
Invisible stress. Yeah. It's not what you think. I'll do it one more time.
Yep.
This I wrote. Are you seeing it?
Yes. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I wrote that during COVID because, we're all sitting at home and it's a whole different mindset that we're dealing with. Every single person who called said stress, 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 stress.
Yep.
So I thought, okay, I've got to work on that. And one of the things is that you do, you, I, everybody, we have a tendency to either shout it out or stuff it down.
Mm,
Now, if you're a shout it outer like me, we're in freak outville.
mm,
So you can join me there.
mm,
If you're a stuff it downer, you're in zombieville.
mm,
Freak outville is very noisy, not necessarily right, but noisy. And zombieville is very quiet.
mm.
Either way, we pay at the end. And this
Wow.
is important for leaders. It's important for emerging leaders. It's important for teams. That's why I really want to kind of underline this here. And what in Invisible Stress, and in the other books too, but this one, is the newest for the moment, is we want to be in what I call the safe stress zone,
Mm,
which is the middle ground
yep.
where we practice safe stress. Very important to practice safe stress. And that, if I can give anything to those who are here with you, Jason, it's that if we find a way to find that balance point, and really quickly, I'm going to give you an exercise that people can take away immediately.
Mm,
Okay. So Sylvia's a shouted outer. I've been known as a drama queen, and it's kind of fun. There's a lot of adrenaline going. Doesn't get you anywhere.
right.
On the other hand, are the avoiders and the deniers, and they're stuffing it down
Yep.
and they're thinking it, but they won't say it. So, what happens if you're in that middle range, the safe stress zone, and you can speak out what you need to in an effective way? So, here's everybody can write this down or you can, you know, show it to them somehow,
Yep.
is you start the conversation when you're upset with somebody with when you. Now, people would say, but then you're pointing the finger at them.
Mm,
Let me finish. Because when you is a way of giving a descriptor to what's going on. I'm going to take a work situation that just
mm,
came up recently with a group that would be meeting weekly, and a few people would be very tardy and they'd come in late and they'd have to repeat what was going on. And it's very frustrating. So
mm,
the facilitator said to me, what do I do? I can't get them going. I said, use the when you process. When you come to the meeting late. All right. It's just a descriptor. You're not telling them they're good, bad, or wrong. You're just saying when you come to the meeting late.
right.
The second sentence is I feel. Okay. So we're going to go to emotional intelligence. I feel discounted. I feel ignored. I feel angry. Get a thesaurus and look up every emotion word that
Mm,
has to do with being annoyed. You know, the next sentence is, and then I. So you're not talking about them, you're letting them know what you do. And then I ignore you. Or
mm,
then I, leave you for last when we're talking. Or then I point at you and make you feel stupid. Okay. So it's when you show up late, I feel discounted, and then I
oh,
make a fool of you.
mm,
Sometimes. Now, the next two sentences are important. What I'm willing to do is, and this is all accountability on you, what I'm willing to do is find out why you're late all the time. Do the meetings have to start later? But we're going to have a conversation about it.
mm,
So, and what I'm not willing to do is keep pretending it's all fine and ignoring it. And then the
yes.
last sentence is critical. And now I'd like to hear from you. And then you
Wow.
know what you have to do? You have to zip it.
Ah, yes.
Let the other person talk. So when you, I feel, and then what I'm willing to do, what I'm not willing to do, and now I'd like to hear from you. Make sense?
Wow. Absolutely. What a great framework. I mean,
Yes.
I'm already thinking of all the situations I've run into in the past where this framework would have been very, very helpful.
Well, it first of all, it creates what, we all know exists.
Mm,
Relationships at work are a two or a three or a five or a 12 party thing. It's a
Yep.
system. And when we shout it out, oh my goodness, you are so stupid, and why are you so late, and blah blah
Mm,
blah. Or when we stuff it down saying, no problem here, meanwhile you're thinking, what a jerk.
yep.
Okay, we don't get anywhere. So that's one of the gifts I want to give you, your readership, your listenership, um, to be able. And it's I will tell you, people have gotten raises, praise, and promotions. I mean, I can't guarantee it just from one 6 sentence thing, but
Right.
it really does begin to shift how you communicate.
Absolutely.
So keep asking. I'm here for more.
Well, I love it. I love it. And we're going to put that in the show notes because
Right.
that framework is, you know, really, really helpful. As you have coached leaders, as you have coached companies, what do you think are some of the, you know, the common mistakes leaders are making when they're communicating in the workplace, whether it's, you know, to each other, whether it's communicating up or down? You know, what are some of the most common mistakes you see?
Well, first of all, we're not thinking big enough,
Mm,
and we're not thinking about the system,
mm,
how things are connected. And I'm going to give you an example of this was in a sales organization. And I got a call from the leader saying they want me to work with you. He didn't particularly want to work with me, but they, HR and the senior VP said, you better call Sylvia. He had been reported to HR because of, interestingly, favoritism.
mm,
And people were furious with him. You know, he was always giving one or two people all the plum assignments
mm.
and introducing them to the right people. And the rest of the people were feeling like, what is the matter with this guy? And he wouldn't listen. So we started meeting. And what I'm going to say, you have to kind of walk tenderly through this, but it's important to understand it and figure out how to talk about it. What we learned in our original organization, which is the family, is what we bring to our present organization at
Mm.
work. Now, I didn't make this up.
Right.
I just know how to read the situation. But I
Right.
want you to think about it this way: we have bosses like parents, we have colleagues like siblings, we get a salary, which is like an allowance.
Mm.
And we even have a timeout, which is, a performance improvement plan.
Yeah.
So there are the similarities there, and I'm not suggesting that people go in and start becoming quote therapists. I don't call myself a therapist
Mm.
anymore, although that's my background. Is really beginning to understand that these things have deep roots, and that if we ask the right questions, we can find a way. So here's what happened. This guy is complaining about this woman who had been the main one going to HR.
Mm.
And I said, well, what is it about her that annoys you so much? And he said, she's arrogant and she has all the answers. Okay.
Oof.
So, you ask the questions, what is it that is upsetting you? And I'm telling you, it's okay to have silence, and it's okay to be quiet when you do
Ooh.
this. And you're going to get an answer.
Yes.
Somebody's going to answer. What is it that upsets you about so and so? She's arrogant and she has all the answers. So later in the conversation, I took a risk. This was a risk because this guy didn't want me in there in the first place. I said, who in your life was like that?
Mm.
He said, oh, nobody. I said, well, what about your parents? What about your dad? And he got really annoyed and he said, my father was a jerk, Sylvia. I said, okay, what is it about him that upset you? Same question,
Mm.
different scenario. He said he was arrogant and he had all the answers. Bingo. Now, what do you do with that? That's the next question. Now, if you do this, anybody who's listening to this, you don't go into more detail. You say,
Oh,
okay,
yeah.
I got it. But later in talking, you help people begin to connect the dots. Okay.
Hmm.
So he said, I can't work with her. I want her fired. She was a top salesperson. She wasn't going to be fired. If anybody was going to believe it was him. And I said, maybe you need to talk with your dad and find out what was so
Oof.
upsetting. And he said, you crossed the line, Sylvia. That's it. There's the door.
Oh.
I said, you sure you really want me to go?
Ah.
And he said, I mean, I was halfway out of my seat and I sat down and he basically said, what should I do? I said, go back and find out where the pattern began. Pattern is the big word.
Mm.
And what triggered you? And trigger, everybody's using that these days for what upsets us.
Mm-hmm.
And he went back and he talked with his dad and he found out that his father, whatever, I don't want to go into the details of it because it doesn't matter, but he found out things about his father that he had never talked about before. And he told him, you know, when you talk down to me,
Mm.
I feel invisible. And then I shut down totally. And what
Wow.
I'm willing to do is discuss this. And what I'm not willing to do is ignore it. And now I'd like to hear from you. It works. It
Wow.
works everywhere.
Wow.
So I said, all right, now what do you want to do with it? You did it with your dad. And he said, let me do it with the gal he was talking about, the main HR gal.
Mm-hmm.
And they started to communicate. We have a program, it's called New Perspectives, that's meant to be for two people who are fighting in
Mm.
a business world. It's a couple of hours, 2 to 3 hours, but you begin to see that what you're upset about with somebody may be totally different than what they're showing you. It could
Right.
be the past. That's been probably Jason, my biggest helpful thing to do is to help people begin to connect those dots.
Oh. Wow.
And from that came the book, Don't Bring It to Work.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Absolutely. Because everyone knows the difference, right? Especially if you work with someone for a while and somebody walks into work. I mean, you can tell right away if they are bringing something to work or if they're not dealing with a situation and the tension just rises. One of the things that we do with our company is we train in interpersonal communication skills. And so much of our body language, we don't even have to say a word. People can just sense it throughout the office, how we sit down, how we shut the door, how we walk through the office, also and very important.
Now, that's why I titled this last book, Invisible Stress.
Mm.
It's not what you think. So let me go through this very quickly because
Yeah.
stress it's high and our culture is really struggling with how to handle it. And we're not doing a good job. There are protests, there are guns, there's
Mm.
firing, people firing, not just guns firing.
Right.
But, so the first thing is there's what's called eustress.
Mm.
EUSTRESS, eustress, not YOU, but eustress. It's a funny word, but that's the word they use. And that's the good stress. It's like preparing for this program. I started getting a little tickle in my tummy. Will I do a good job or not? When
Mm-hmm.
you're going to be hired for a job, when you're on a first date, whatever it is. But that stress is good. It helps keep you standing up straight. You
Mm.
won't flop on the floor and just lie there. It gives you energy. The next, of course, is acute stress. And acute stress, we've all had it. It's you're driving the car and all of a sudden, boom, and you say, I know that tree wasn't there 2 seconds ago.
Mm.
But there you are with the car and the tree in a relationship you don't like.
Yep.
Okay. And what we do with acute stress is we forget to exhale. We inhale and we hold it. And this is everybody does this. And if you don't let it go, it will become chronic stress.
Mm.
So we've got eustress, acute stress, chronic stress, which is where the pharmaceutical companies and I'm not judging them. I'm saying sometimes we need what they have,
Right.
but sometimes we use that to mask the upset.
Mm.
Remember, those who shout it out need certain kinds of medications to quiet them. those who stuff it down need something to get the depression out of them. And then the fourth stress, the invisible stress, is what we're talking about. It's the stress of what we learned as kids,
Mm.
and we bring it into our adult lives and we bring it to work. Period. So, an example, and I'll use me since I mentioned I'm a drama queen. I'm not anymore. I'll tell you what happens is when you learn these patterns, you then can transform them.
Mm.
So, first, the pattern. So, I grew up, I was the youngest of two kids, and I have an older brother who was king of the hill. So my older brother, became the doctor, my son the doctor, and everybody's so proud of him. Nice guy, I really like him. But the point is, if I wanted to be heard, I had to make a lot of noise.
Mm.
So I learned to have hissy fits, I learned to cry, I learned to pound my hands. That's internally in me. And
Mm.
there's a law, it's called Hebb's law, which is neurons that fire together wire together.
Mm.
What does that mean? You keep doing the same thing and repeating it. After a while, it's a habit. It's a pattern, you know. And it has good. I mean, you learn to play the piano, you keep playing the same thing, or you do your tennis swings, et cetera, et cetera. That's good. But when it comes to conflict, if you keep doing the same thing, so here's what happened one day. I was in a meeting, I was facilitating it, and it was getting a little out of hand. And I was
Mm.
really in my drama queen days. And I sort of pounded my hand on the desk and said, "This is ridiculous, blah, 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 blah." And somebody on the corner turned to somebody next to her and said, "Oh my God, she's so dramatic."
Ooh. Ooh.
So I thought to myself, what do they know? Right? Go through the day. I'm in a second meeting in the afternoon and a variation of the conflict. It is a different company, variation of upset. I knew not to pound my hand on the desk, but I put my hand up and I said, "Wait a minute, wait a minute. This isn't working. Wait a minute." Blah, 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 blah. As we walked out, somebody said, "Sylvia, could you tone the drama down a bit?" And I thought, what do they know? Twice. I get home, and that evening, my daughters were in college at the time. One of my daughters called to tell me something that happened, and I got really annoyed. I said, "Julie, that's so stupid, blah, blah, blah." She said, "Mom, when you start in with your drama,
Mm.
nobody can talk to you. And so we're going to hang up, and I'll talk to you tomorrow." Clink. And I sat there, and I was annoyed with her. I was annoyed with the situation, but I also thought 3 times in one day, I better pay attention.
Ooh. Right.
And that's how this whole idea of pattern development, pattern awareness
Mm.
came to being. Now, as I learned this and began to understand it, I thought, okay, so I have 13 patterns, and anybody who wants them at the end, they can email me and I'll send them.
Mm.
Or you can buy, don't bring it to work. It's, but I'll send you just the patterns. But I thought if that's all I do, it's a waste of my time. It's like, "Hi, my name is Sylvia and I'm a drama queen." Okay, so where do you go with it from there?
Right.
So I thought, okay, what would the opposite be? How do we transform this? And I thought, well, drama queens love adrenaline. They love to be the center of attention. What can you do that's similar? That you become a good storyteller.
Mm.
The difference is when you're telling this story, it has focus. It goes somewhere. It gives an answer. It's not just, "Look how noisy I can be."
Yep.
So the drama queen become or king, and there are plenty of drama kings. We know them, we see them on television all the time. They're there. We work with them. You become a good storyteller because there's a purpose to what you're saying. The next is an avoider. And they're usually, they fall on the fence, the side of Zombieville.
Mm.
And what I've seen in meetings, it's so interesting. So, those of you who are paying attention to this, see which I'm not going to go through all 13. We don't have time for that. but which pattern has your name on it? Okay. So the avoider will be in a meeting and it gets fairly contentious. And I've watched this over and over. And the avoider will look at his watch or his cell phone and say, "Oh, I forgot I have a meeting. I have to call, you
Right.
know, whoever." And they are up and out of there.
Yep.
So what happens? They never get anything resolved.
Mm.
And the avoider transformed becomes an initiator. They're the ones who will say, "I see the problem. I'll speak the problem, and we're going to stay here and resolve the problem."
Mm.
You know, it's the flip of running away from it. And they usually get lots of uh, good things on their reports, and they get promotions all over the place. Once you change this, it's the same energy, only it has somewhere to go. Am I making any sense to you?
Absolutely.
Well, you
Absolutely.
wouldn't say no. I'm your.
Well,
But I'm
well,
asking.
I would ask for clarity if it wasn't coming through. I'm just thinking through so many situations that I've experienced over the years. If I would have, especially in a managerial role, had some of these tools, even the framework, I just love that. The when you, I mean, just to be able to walk through that process. I mean, how many marriages could this framework help? You know, parenting relationships, and then the workplace relationships. This is just wonderful. What advice would you give, or maybe a challenge to the person in the office who just can't keep away from the gossip, can't keep away from just stirring things up? You know, could you just speak to that for a second, and just maybe
Okay,
even
that's happens to be one of the hardest patterns to
mm,
do. It's called the splitter.
mm,
Okay, and we've all worked with them. There is a level where gossip is okay. Back in the day, in
mm,
tribal times, somebody who was next to the chief of the tribe would get on his horse and go to another tribe to say, "So what's going on here?
mm,
Tell me who's good, who's bad." So they could then align with each other and then go back and say, "Well, here's what I heard." So there is a level where, it has its purpose, but for the most part, gossip, he said, she said, they said, gossip is very destructive.
mm,
So when that happens, and drama queens, kings like gossip, excuse me. So you have to learn to get an observation of your behavior. But, somebody will say, "Wow, did you hear about Susie?" And my first inclination is, tell me, I want the juice. But what I've learned, and I'm giving this to everybody who's listening to this, is to say, if you think telling me about Susie will make positive change, I want to hear it.
mm. Wow. Yes.
So there's a level of accountability. I mean, somebody in a company I work with decided it was time for her to leave. And she called me. This was Monday. And she called me and said, "I don't know. I don't like what's going on." I said, "What do you mean?" She said, her prior boss, who's not with the company anymore, called her and said, "Three people from the company called and told me you're leaving." And of course, she said, "Well, what did they say?" And,
Mm,
they were saying all the gossipy things. And she said, "I didn't call you because I didn't want to start the gossip trade."
mm.
And, we did that as kids. And it's called whispering down the lane. You remember playing that
Yes.
game? It starts with, "Tomorrow will be sunny," and it ends with, "I hate everybody here, and I'm never going to
Right.
work here another day." I mean,
Right.
and it's you just watch it. So stopping the gossip is a sign of leadership,
Mm,
but it's a sign of saying, "If you want to tell me this, I'm going to listen." And if you say it's just between us, you can't tell anybody, you have to say that's not how it works. If you tell me, I have to decide if it's worth discussing with somebody else, including whatever the gossip's about or not, you're going to. So if you don't trust me with that, keep it to yourself.
Yeah.
You get a whole group of people saying, don't tell me. It was back with, was it John Lennon who said, what if we had a war and nobody came? You know, it's that, what if the gossip, nobody did more gossip? What would happen?
Wow.
The
Absolutely.
truth would start to come out more.
And sometimes people can, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but confuse questioning with gossip. If a decision's made and then, people are starting to question it or trying to get more answers, especially if they go to, the people who made the decisions. What I think I've found in some unhealthy organizations is that they will view, especially the people who made the decisions and now they're being questioned, instead of answering the questions, instead of being open, they say, why would you do that? You're spreading gossip. These questions don't need to be asked. Would
They
you
were,
agree with that, or do you think I'm off
no, I
there?
think you're right. No, you're right. So here's another sentence. I mean, I've spent a lot of time listening and crafting sentences that kind of can go in at a different level.
Mm,
And that is, help me understand.
right.
Help me understand. It's not blaming. There may be
Yep.
some blame at some point, but help me understand why you this happened. Help me
Yes.
understand why you want to talk about this. Help me understand what you think can be of benefit here. It's
Yeah.
a powerful accountability
Yeah.
question.
Absolutely.
Next one. Wait, let me just say this because it
Yeah.
goes with it.
Yeah.
Is so you say, help me understand, and somebody says yada yada yada. The next thing you say, and I'm telling you, this is like gold in the bank,
Mm,
is you say, tell me more.
mm,
Tell me more. I don't understand this, but it sort of opens up something in the brain. I can't quite get it. All these years I've been doing this, but I know it works. Help me understand. People will say more, excuse me, more at a deeper level
yep.
with that, simply that 3 words, help me understand.
Wow. Boy, that's so
So
good.
these are communication tools and on the route to leadership,
Yep.
they'll get you where you want to go, or at
Yep.
least partway there.
Absolutely. What give us some advice as we kind of round the conversation, especially how we can communicate in an effective and healthy way to our boss. Are there practices? Are there ways to communicate that can build us trust with our boss? That can build us trust with our team, so they don't look at us as the one trying to kiss our boss's rear end. What are some of those best communication practices that you've seen?
Well, it's interesting because one of the things I believe is that telling the truth is a superpower.
Mm.
Now, I'll tell you a quick story. I was at an offsite and there were about 20 people in the room. And the boss of this group had been through several of our programs. She needed more, and I'll tell you that in a minute. And somebody said something, and she said, that is the dumbest thing I ever heard.
Mm.
And
Mm.
I went, oh my God. People were like sliding under the table. So I mean, they were just, oh my God, how fast can I get
Right.
out of here?
Right.
And he said, I'm sorry. And she said, and furthermore, you've made that kind of comment here and here and here, and it never works.
Mm.
And the room is frozen.
Mm.
So I did what any good facilitator does. I said, why don't we take a break? And I took her literally by her shirt and said, you come with me. And we went in the other room and I said, what are you doing?
Right.
And she said, well, Sylvia, you teach telling the truth is a key thing for leadership. And I finally got it. Telling the
Mm.
truth is not spilling your guts.
Mm.
It is a very disciplined art form. So I began to literally count words when I'd be in meetings and truth is being told. The words in the sentence are usually 7, 9 to 11 words. They're not run on sentences, and they're not finger pointing, they're not blaming. They're simply saying, "This is how I see this, and I would like you to know.
Mm.
And here is what I'd like you to see."
Yep.
Okay? So telling the truth is not spilling your guts. And it's very important. But back to telling the truth to somebody you report to, one of the truths I've seen over all the years I've done this is fear.
Mm.
Is if I tell you what I'm really thinking, I'm concerned you're going to, ignore me, dislike me,
Yep.
um, push me away, defend yourself. The other thing is people tend to defend, explain, and justify when they have a finger pointed. You don't want to point the finger. You want to say, this is difficult for me.
Wow. Right.
But then you
Right.
have to say it. This is difficult, but I care enough to tell the truth.
Yeah. Yeah.
And,
Absolutely.
and yeah, and if I saying it to my boss, if I go along too far, put your hand up and stop me.
Mm. Oh,
It's
that's
everything
so
is
good.
relational.
Yeah.
So I hope
That's
some of this is helping.
well. I know it will help our listeners. I'm resonating with it so much already, even with some of the situations. And so, before I let you go, let me ask you some rapid fire questions. We're building this online communication skills, leadership skills library. So it's a spreadsheet. We've had over 100 guests on the podcast. We asked them all these questions. And so we've been compiling all of this great material. We talk a lot about speakers. Do you have a favorite speaker? Just somebody who, boy, you love to listen to. Doesn't matter how many times they just fill your
I
bucket.
love Marshall Goldsmith.
Mm.
I don't know if you know him, but
Oh yeah.
he is one of the most genuine people that I've ever met.
Mm.
And he's worked with some really big companies way at the top, but he's very humble, and he's very smart, and he's kind.
Mm.
So, and that to me is where things go: humble, smart, and kind.
Mm.
What a combination.
So good. Is there a podcast or a YouTube channel that you love, either from a guilty pleasure end or leadership communication skills development that just continues helping you grow?
I'll say yours because I how about that?
Well, thank you.
So you get the point for that.
Yeah. And is there a book that you recommend every leader should read? I mean, this is, if there's, if you have a choice of all these books, this book you should read as a leader.
It's not a business book. It's a life book.
Mm.
It's Man's Search for Meaning.
Mm.
It's the book, Viktor Frankl's book. It was written. He was a psychiatrist and he was in the Holocaust. And
Mm.
it's not about the Holocaust per se. It's about how we perceive what matters in life.
Mm.
It's been a change agent for so many people. In fact, we used to do a program called In Search of Meaning in honor
Mm.
of that, when we were doing more personal work, and then we moved into the business world.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's so good. Where can we send people? We'll put it in the show notes or put it in the community Facebook group. Best website, best way to get, find out more about you online.
Yeah. The website is www.ceoptions.com. It's creative energy options. And if we have 2 seconds, I'll just tell you,
Yes.
when we were developing the program, I'm a therapist by background, a family therapist. And I was working with my husband, and we were naming this new company. And we got creative energy because, it's so exciting
Mm.
to take energy and move it around. And it didn't feel like enough. So we got options. which is CEO for short, never, never thinking I would be working in the business world.
Uh,
And it turned into that, which is
yes.
my new book coming out called Glimmers to Greatness.
Oh,
And
wow.
it's about these glimmers that we have. That was one of them because I
Mm,
didn't want to work in the business world. I grew up my father was in a family business and they fought all the time. I thought,
mm,
oh, I don't want that. But once I started in the business world, I saw, interestingly, Jason, more people, males in particular, will do self awareness work
mm,
from the business perspective more than they will if their wife is dragging them into a therapist or the kid
mm.
is acting. Once they get it, they can take it home. But so it's www.ceoptions.com. The first book is Don't Bring It to Work, which is, it's 250-page, book with all the details in it. And then I did one for women called Gutsy, How Women Leaders Make Change. And it
Mm.
takes women through, it's a different cycle because in terms of patterns, women are often pleasers. And the pleaser becomes a really good truth teller.
Mm.
So, and another book called Unique about how story sparks diversity, inclusion, and engagement,
Oh, wow.
and how we will respond to each other through story, personal stories, and you don't have to share everything. It's
Hmm.
not a tell-all, but enough to get to see the other person, and then of course invisible stress, which we talked about, and my new one will be out in May,
Oh,
hopefully.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, we'll link each of those books. We'll put them in the show notes, and then we'll put them in the communication skills library and in our Facebook group. Sylvia, I can't thank you enough. This has been so rich. I have loved this conversation. You've just poured out such great wisdom. I know this is going to help our audience, and just so appreciate you and your time.
And thank you for doing what you do. It's important.
Well, thank you for joining us on another episode of the Speak with People podcast. We hope that you were encouraged. We hope that you were inspired and challenged to improve your communication skills. I want to thank you again for being a part of the Speak with People podcast community. Make sure you don't miss out on being a part of the Speak with People Facebook community group. Just head to Facebook, type in Speak with People, scroll down, and join our community, because every single day we're encouraging each other. We're helping each other to improve our communication skills. Thanks again, and we'll see you in the next episode.